Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to the BioTalk series week 1 on plant derived value added products hosted by the Biotechnology Department of St. Joseph's College of Engineering, Chennai. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome all the participants, including faculty, students, and research scholars across the globe. My warm welcome to our HOD, my staff members, and students to the BioTalk series. I extend my kind greetings and special welcome to our resource person of the session, Dr. M. Narayani. Welcome, ma'am. Once again, I'm happy to welcome all the participants who have joined the Biotalk series and are ready to acquire knowledge on different aspects of biotechnology. Now, I request HOD Dr. G. Sri Kumar Sir, Professor and Head of Department, to give the inaugural speech.
Good evening, everybody. The Department of Biotechnology is hosting a special webinar series called BioTalk Lecture Series. Since there are audiences from various places, I wish to brief some highlights about our college and department. The St. Joseph College of Engineering is one of the top colleges in India with the 160th position as per current NIRF ranking. It has got 26 years of high reputation in educational society with the NAC A plus grade accreditation. It is having 10 UG programs and 7 PG programs with an affiliation from Anna University, Chennai. Coming to our Department of Biotechnology has been started in the year 2002 and having BTech and MTech biotechnology programs. In that way, so far we have bagged 139 university ranks with 10 golds and 7 silver medals with 100% pass percentage. I should emphasize here that every year our students bag 40% of the total ranks that are declared by Anna University. The department has got high-end laboratory facilities and fetched research grant recognition to do PhD program and having more than 1.1 crores of rupees as government funding for conducting research. All of you well aware that the current pandemic outbreak has paralyzed the entire world into standstill and enforce a psychological pressure in the minds of academicians and students. Despite this unseen circumstances, our biotech department still wishes to keep the people educated and about the ongoing research and development occurring in our field. There are 23 Indian states are involved as per the participants are concerned, from Jammu Kashmir to Tamil Nadu and Punjab to West Bengal, all over the country. With this proud note, on behalf of the patrons, Dr. B.B. Bhau Manoharan, Chairman of St. Joseph Group of Institutions, and Madam Jessie Priya, Managing Director, and Mr. Sashi Shekhar, Director, Dr. V. Seshagiri Rao, Principal of the college, and Dr. Parvatavardhini, Dean of the college. I welcome the invited speakers and all participants and inaugurate this BioTalk lecture series. I take this opportunity to convey my warm felicitation to the organizing team, Madam Yuvarani and the student coordinators, and extend my best wishes for the success of the webinar series. All the best. Thank you. Over to Ms. Yarini.
Thank you for your kind words, sir. Our resource person for today's event is Dr. Narayani M, and the topic of the talk is value added products from plants. Dr. Narayani M is currently working as a faculty in the School of Biotechnology, NIT Calicut. She has completed her BTech Biotechnology in 2009 from Anna University. She then qualified GATE and joined MTech Research in Industrial Biotechnology at NIT Surthakal, Karnataka in the year 2011. She moved on to work brief from the year 2011 to 12 in IIT Kharagpur as a research scholar. She later completed a PhD in biotechnology from IIT Madras in the year 2018. Her areas of expertise include bioprospecting and natural product research, bioprocess engineering, which include plant, microbial cell culture, and downstream processing. Process analytical techniques, mainly chromatography and mass spectrometry, and product characterization in environmental biology. She accomplished 11 publications in international journals with H index of 7 and 337 citations. Dr. Narayani has also filled an international patent and has attended 24 conference and symposium presentations. Dr. Narani was invited for a talk titled Production and Characterization of Cyclotides, Unique Plant Cyclic Peptides in Vitro Culture of Violet Tricolor in 2nd International Symposium on Phytochemical in Medicine and Food 2ISPAMF organized jointly by the Phytochemical Society of Europe, Phytochemical Society of Asia and International Society of Chinese Medicine. Fuzhou, China, April 7 to 10, 2017. Dr. Narani M. is also a reviewer in international journals including Biotechnology Reports Elsevier, Environmental Pollution Elsevier, Current Environmental Engineering Bentham Science Publishers. We are more than privileged to have you in this session, ma'am. I now carry over the session to Dr. Narani M.
The strategy is bioactivity guided fractionation. So what is this? I'm just giving you a brief information. So here, chemical fractionation as well as the bioactivity assay goes parallelly. So what you do is you just extract, prepare an extract, and then what you do is you divide the extract into several fractions. So there is a logic on how you divide. You divide basically depend on its polarity or some particular chemical property. So each extract is going to have a particular group of compounds, or a particular, it may be made up of particular solvent, so on. So then you try to test all these extracts, and whichever extract shows positive signal for a particular bioactivity that you have already prefixed in your mind. I am going to check for anti-cancer activity, or I am going to check for antioxidant activity, right? So that has to be fixed in your mind so that you test for that particular activity. And yes, if the extract is found active, what you do is you try to subject it to several other extraction procedures or purification procedures, where you try to again fractionize the particular extract until you get a pure compound. So this is, you see that the chart shows you that the bioassay is parallelly conducted with the fractionation procedure. So that's the name suggests, that is bioactivity guided fractionation. So coming to the steps, like how to actually prepare your extract. The first step would be the choice of plant. Now, how are you going to select your plant? So that is the first question in your mind. So there is an approach called random approach, where you don't have a logical scientific logic behind it on selecting a plant. You select the plant because it is very easily available near to your locality, or you think it is so cute. So there could be several reasons. No, so it's a random reason. So it's a random approach. Then the second approach is ethnopharmaceutical approach. In this approach, what you do is you try to take the knowledge from the indigenous community, or you have this system, Indian system of medicines, or Chinese system of medicines, like you have Indian system of medicines like Ayurveda, Siddha. So you try to extract knowledge from that. Say certain plants are known to process certain activity. People use it traditionally for a particular purpose, right? If there is a skin infection, people then make a paste of that particular plant and they apply it on the skin. So you should now understand that that plant is definitely going to have some kind of molecule which is arresting, or which is stopping, preventing the skin infection, right? So that's how you take the knowledge from the ethnobotany. And then the next approach is systematic approach. So this approach actually combines both the taxonomic information as well as the chemical information of a particular plant. So you have a lot of databases and websites. For example, there's a web database called NAPR Alert. So that gives you all kinds of information, like which family of plant is known to possess certain activity. So when you group them, and then you can do a guesswork saying that, yes, maybe if 100 plants in that particular family is known to have this compound, the 101 plant might also have. So that is called systematic approach. And the next approach is ecological approach. So what is ecological approach? You see that certain plants are attracted to, certain insects are attracted to particular plants, whereas certain insects are repelled by certain plants, right? You see that some insects never go and sit on a particular plant. It means that that plant has something to do, right? It produces certain kind of molecules which does not allow the insect to sit. Then you see how the ecology is, how the living organisms communicate with the plant, interact with the plant. So based on that information, you choose your plant. So coming to the step 2 is the collection and identification of plant material. It is very important. First of all, which geographical location would you choose to pick a particular plant? That is very important. Then so the second parameter that you see is what is the season, because the phytochemical profiling actually changes with the geographical location of a particular plant. So if you see the slide shows you how there is a variation of the particular compound called as peptides, which was my research. So you see that these plants are collected from different locality like Ooty, Chennai, and Jammu Kashmir, and you see that the profile is different. Different. There are different kinds of compounds that is produced by plants from each locality. So this tells you that geographical location actually there is a variation in the phytochemical composition with the geographical location, right? So then comes the season. With the season, again, the climatic condition is different, because if the plant is producing something that is going to be, anti-UV. So then if the season is, say, rainy season, the plant doesn't require, it doesn't waste energy by producing the same compound during the rainy season, it is not required. So the season actually influences the chemical profile of a particular plant. Then comes what type of organ you're looking for, because leaf, root, stem, flower, bark, or different organs have different composition of chemicals, right? Leaf is exposed outside, roots are present in the ground. So what the kind of atmosphere they are, the kind of environment they are, they may be attacked by different kind of microorganisms which is present in the soil but not on the surface. So the shoots will have different profile, right? The leaf is going to have a different profile. The flower is going to have a different chemical profile. So next comes here, I have shown you two pictures. Now I want all of you to look into these pictures and tell me, I mean, I know that I can't hear you, but still, just please give a try. If you could see any differences between plants. I just want to tell you whether these plants are one of the same or it is different. So I hope you must have found out by now. These are two different plants, but this actually looks similar, and this is not an easy task to differentiate between plants, which we people can do. So it is always necessary to take your plant to a taxonomist, get it authenticated, and let them give an authentication certificate saying that yes, this is this particular plant. So that is very important step to do. Then comes herbarium deposition. You cannot work with a plant without depositing in a herbarium, because that is required for any reference. Okay, any future reference depends on this particular detail. So it is always required to deposit the plant material whichever you are working in a herbarium, and keep a voucher receipt with you. So the step 3 is extraction, where you try to separate the desired phytochemicals from the raw material. So it begins with, as usual, the plant material. Then you select an extraction process. Then you concentrate it, and you get a dried form of an extract. So first comes the preparation of the material. So the moment you take the plant material, it is required that you wash it. It is having a lot of dust and other impurities, right? So you wash the plants thoroughly. Then the question comes is whether I should use a fresh plant material or a dry one. Now, say if you're using a fresh material, it should be really fresh. You should be in a locality, you should be working in a locality where your collection site is going to be very close by. Because the more time you take to bring the material to your laboratory, what is going to happen is there is going to be a lot of enzymatic reactions that will happen soon after you harvest it. Okay, no longer the plant will have the same metabolic profile as it was originally. So people generally prefer a dried plant material. The reason being, when you do an experiment, reproducibility is very important. And when you dry the plant material, it is going to have a similar profile. So there is going to be high reproducibility. And more than that, the fresh material always has more than 80% of water content. So when you do extraction procedure, when you use pure solvents, you cannot really keep a hold on the solvent concentration, because each plant material is going to have a different water content. So it is going to follow with your extraction procedure. Then the next step is grinding. So you have to grind your plant material to a powder form. And let me give some more details. How are you going to, buy your plant material is depending on the targets that you're looking for. If you're looking for certain thermolabile compounds, what you have to do is you can use techniques like freeze drying, where it is dried over low temperature, or you can use a hot air oven, but never exposed to direct sunlight, because it is going to give a lot of reactions. It will result in a lot of different kind of compounds, because UV radiation, keeping under UV radiation directly is not advisable, or even harsh sun conditions, right? Then comes grinding, and then comes packaging and storage. So this is very important. You pack it, you seal it so that it's airtight, and the storage is very important, because you're going to carry an experiment for quite a long time. So you have to store it preferably at the lower temperature. Lower, better. The next is extraction technique. So what kind of extraction technique would I use? This again depends on what kind of product you're looking for. One can choose more than one technique. So here are certain basic techniques, very simple ones. Maceration. So what is maceration? Say if you have a tea bag and you dip it in a glass of water, what is going to happen? You are going to soak it for a while. What is going to happen is you are going to get the extract of that particular extract. So that is something similar to maceration. You take your extract powder material, and then you dip it in a solvent and you keep it for a quite a longer or shorter duration. That depends on your experimental procedure. Then comes decoction. So what is decoction? It's like how you make tea. You boil water and put your tea leaves into it, and you get the extract of the tea. So that is decoction. Then comes percolation. So it is similar to the setup of the filter coffee, right? You have a cylindrical cone, and towards the end you will see there will be a nozzle, and in between you will have a perforated plate. So you put your plant material, dried powder, on it, and on top of it you pour your solvent, and you will find that this percolates, and you get the extract dripping from the bottom, similar to your filter coffee apparatus. Then comes sucklet extraction. So you are seeing animation of the sucklet extraction. On the slide, you see that it has three different parts. It has a collecting glass, then there is a portion called thimble where you pack your dried plant material, and then you find a reactive condenser. So you see that the solvents rise up and they come down. So this is a cycle that keeps on going. Then comes microwave assisted extraction. So this you can do in a microwave. So where you have a vessel, say a beaker or something, which has the solvent and the powder material. And then the most important factor is the irradiation power and the temperature that has to be controlled based on the kind of extraction. Next is ultrasound assisted extraction. So here you use a sonicator, where ultrasonic waves are passed, and you have to be very careful with the frequency setting and the duration that you actually use it for extraction. The last one shown in the slide is the superficial fluid extraction, superficial fluid, and you see that this is called as a green technology because it uses the supercritical fluid. So you have supercritical fluids such as carbon dioxide. These are dense gases and they are very good, but it is not so easy to use in a small laboratory setup. It requires a specified equipment. So it is used in the industrial scale, especially caffeine production is done using this particular super critical fluid extraction technique. Here I am showing you some comparison of different extracts. Extraction procedures, you see some require temperature, some require very harsh, some require very less temperature, and you see that the pressure is different, the amount of organic solvent consumed is different. It all depends on your convenience and the way you want your extract to be. Each of these extraction techniques has its own advantages and disadvantages. Right? So most important thing, the factors affecting the extraction efficiency. So what are those factors? The first one is the extraction solvent. This is very important when you start with an extraction process. So you see the selectivity, the solubility, the cost, and most importantly, the safety is important. You don't want to risk your life for safe research, right? I think nobody will do that, right? So that is very important. So what generally happens is we don't use flammable solvents, And the rule goes like, how do I select the solvent of my interest is like dissolves. So you should remember this, okay? Enam inathoda CBC, right? So similarly, so you have different kinds of solvents. Like if your compound is polar, go for a polar solvent. If your compound is medium in polarity, then go for some ethyl acetate and dichloromethane. And then if you go for non-polar, okay, then you can use like solvents like hexane or petroleum ether. I'll just give you some brief information about the compounds. So you see here, non-polar solvents are helpful in, solubilizing products like some fatty acids. You can use hexane for, solubilizing fatty acids or wax, and you can use medium polarity solvents for alkaloids or flavins. And polar solvents like ethanol is very well known for, extraction of tannins, flavonoids, etc. So remember, there is no universal solvent that you can use it as such. Everything, you have to work it out to find out which is the best solvent for your particular experiments. Then comes the particle size. So smaller the particle, it's better, because there will be an enhanced penetration of the solvents and diffusion of solutes. The second thing is solvent to solid ratio. So this is also again very important. If you use very less amount of solvent, and then what will happen is the extraction won't be efficient. So in order to increase the yield, what you do is you increase the solvent to the material, the plant material, the powdered material ratio, whichever you use. Higher, the better. But if you don't have a presumption like if I use more amount of solvent, is going to give me higher yield. No, the extraction is going to happen until equilibrium is attained. So no matter how much ever extra solvents you're going to give, it is not going to really help with the extraction yield. Then the most important thing is extraction temperature. You know that with increase in temperature, the solubility increases. But you should be very careful, because if you're working with some compounds which will get degraded at higher temperature, then no, you cannot go with extreme temperature. Also, the extraction duration is said to increase the extraction efficiency. But remember to not expose your compounds too much into the solvent. Don't take too much time for your extraction, because more it is in the solvent, you're actually degrading the compound. So that is why concentration is very important. We try to remove as much as solvents as we could. We are not going to expose the compounds to huge amount of solvent for longer time. So you try to concentrate. I have shown you an animation of rotary evaporator here. So which is a kind of technique which works on reduced pressure. So this helps you to concentrate. That is, you see that if it is say 1 liter of extract, that you can reduce it to 10 ml or so. And then you can use subsequent techniques for drying, like you can plunge into a liquid nitrogen can, or you can use freeze drying or lyolaser, right, to get a product. Or if you don't have any facility, you can use your hot air oven itself, but try to have a control in the temperature. Do not keep it too much of higher temperature. Try to keep as low as possible. And then comes the important factor is storage. As I said, lower temperature, better it is, right? If you have minus 20, good. And if you have minus 80-degree freezer, then that is well and good, right? That's wonderful. So try to preserve your extract in as much as low temperature as you could. Then comes the identification of bioactive compounds. So first I have my crude extract. Now I want to know what are the metabolites present in it. So what I would do is I would use techniques like LCMS or GCMS. Each technique has its own advantages and disadvantages, right? Then you get an entire profiling, like to a maximum extent. So you'll come to know what are the unique metabolites that is present in your extract, right? Or what are the known metabolites that is present in your particular plant. Also, this will help you to give natural libraries, right? You are more information you're giving to the society, the better. Right? Forget about whether it has activity or not, because what bioactivity you are seeking might not be there, but definitely the compound is going to have, the metabolite is going to have a different bioactivity, right? So after you get an idea of what kind of compounds is present in an extract, you go for fractionation and purification. So how to do this fractionation is by using a liquid extraction technique, or you can use the purification using any chromatographic column. So how liquid extraction goes is, it goes with successive extraction of a variety of solvents you take. And you see here in the figure, right? You have original solvent, then you add new solvent, and you see there is a migration of certain metabolites from one solvent to another solvent. Right now you have two different fractions. So especially this can be utilized for bioactivity guided assays, where this helps you to fractionate. So for example, you use two immiscible liquids here, right? So that there is a phase separation and you can separate two different layers, and now two different layers are going to serve as two different fractions. Now this means that two different fractions are going to have different components, different polarity, metabolites of different polarity. Same like a liquid-liquid extraction is purification using a column. So it depends on what kind of column you're using. You can buy a burette and you can pack a column yourself. You can use materials like gel, which has exclusion capacity of so and so range, and then you can use a reverse phase. You can use a C80 particles. You can fill with silica. You can have several compounds that you can do. One second. So purification using chromatography. So how to do purification with chromatography is like you have column chromatography as I said, or you have size exclusion chromatography, or that comes a solid phase extraction. So what is solid phase extraction? There are plastic cartridge, which you can actually that is actually available, and you see that there is a column is packed with some material, and you pour your extract on top of it, and then what you see is, as you pour, you see that each of these compounds is going to have a preferential absorption to the column, and with time, you see you get different colored compounds, which means that you have different fractions. So you can collect this fraction. Again, you can subject each of these fractions for the bioactivity guided assays. Once you find the right fraction, you find, yes, this is going to be my fraction, you subject that fraction for further purification. Like you see, this is a particular strategy where technique which is used for final purification. It's called HPLC. So this is from Agilent, which is a company again. So you can purify in order to get a pure extract. Then comes the structural characterization. So what is the structural characterization? Is that you have several approaches, like you have you have spectrometric approaches, like you have the IR, infrared, you have UV, ultraviolet, you have mass spectrometer, or you have NMR. So these are different techniques which will help you to identify a particular molecule. Now, you can also couple with certain chromatographic techniques, like you can couple with LC or GC if you find that your extract is not relatively pure. Okay, so I'll explain about one particular technique, that is mass spectrometry, how it is useful for metabolite identification. Say if you have an intact metabolite, okay, if you get a mass of 349, now just imagine how many molecules will be, or how many metabolites will be having a similar mass, right? 349, there would be hundreds of molecules or hundreds of metabolites with the same mass. So how do you actually distinguish between them? Is by fragmenting them. That is, you give a certain colliding energy, collision energy, which will help you to break the molecules into different fragments, which will appear as individual peaks. Okay. There's a disturbance. Okay, so this is an example that I have shown you. This is a compound called rutin. So now you see that it has a molecular mass of 611.16. So this is the M by Z ratio. So the moment you give a fragmentation energy, what is going to happen is you'll find that there is going to be an MS pattern, right? So you see that there are two peaks instead of one. This has actually fragmented into two different units. So the first peak actually is because of this particular group that you see, this particular group, right, is lost from the structure. So that is Ramosin. So you see that there is another peak, which is actually because of another group, right, which is actually as a loss of glycosyl units. So you, based on this particular signature, so every compound is going to have its own signature. So based on the signature, what you're going to do is you're going to identify what molecule it is. But so far, what we were talking about, do you really think that this is going to be a sustainable production? of any bioactive compounds? Definitely not, because a lot of trees are cut or a lot of plants are cut, and this is going to actually lead into deforestation, which you will not at all prefer, right? Nobody wants to do that. Let me tell you a simple story about factory taxes. So this is a story where you see that in during the 1970s, the US actually had a mission where they wanted to discover some anti-cancer drugs. So what they did was they did an extensive screening program, and out of that, they found that the Pacific yew tree had a component or had the metabolite which is called paclitaxel, which had good activity against cancer. So then they started the clinical trials in the 1980s, and the product was launched by a company called Bristol Myers, and now it is sold in a name called Taxol. But what you find here is you find that that particular company, which claims to produce Taxol, is now using a different technology. Why? Because you see that the paclitaxel content in a particular tree is about 0.0004 percentage, which is very less. And in order to satisfy the need of one patient for lifetime, you have to cut 3 trees, and each of them should be 100-year-old tree, because this product is taken from the bark of the tree. So, but you do that, right? It leads to deforestation, but that's what they did. And now the the tree is an endangered species. It's critically endangered. So nobody wants to do this, right? Nobody wants to cut the trees. This is not a favorable thing to do. So what we can do is how to how to use a sustainable technique for production of any compound of interest, right? So for that, you can use plant bioprocessing, which involves the use of plant tissue or plant organs or plant cells, right? And they are involved for the production of bioactive compounds. What is the advantage of plant tissue culture is that you can actually, this does not have any geographical barriers. Like you can produce a compound sitting at any location. However, the plant is not native to that particular geographical location.
Question is, so what is the protein damage in extraction? Is there any other better method than rotary evaporator for concentration?
What can you come up with the first part? I understood your second part of the
What are the protein damages involved in extraction? And is there any other better method than rotary evaporators for concentration?
protein damages. So, are you really talking about extraction of protein here? Or I don't really understand your question, or it is like you are saying that is there any other interfering enzymes that will actually, interfere with the metabolite analysis? Are you that? So I'll just talk about both. See, whenever you take a flush material, it is going to undergo, like you have in your cell apoptosis, there is going to be several enzymes that will actually hydrolyze a lot of metabolites present in it, and which now it is going to give you a different structure which you don't want. So that's the reason we take it really fresh, or you try to remove the moisture as soon as possible. And if you want to extract a protein from the plant, and then definitely depends on the stabilities. Like I work with one particular peptide which is highly stable, so I use the dried one. Dried in the sense you can immediately lyophilize it and then use it, so that there won't be any oxidation or hydrolysis reaction taking place. Or you can also dry them under a hot air and use. It didn't really change the profile to much extent. And if if you want to take some other protein, and then it is advisable that you do it immediately with certain buffers. You extract with buffers. The fresher, the better. You don't keep it for long time. And then coming to the second part of the question, is there any alternative for rotary evaporator? See, it depends. Rotary evaporator works under reduced pressure. What happens is you can do it in really very temperature lesser than the boiling point of the solvent that you have used. So in case if you don't have a rotary evaporator, then you have no option than boiling it directly in order to evaporate. So you can have a reflex condense and you can boil it. Otherwise, you can keep it in an oven. You keep the temperature very low, but it is going to definitely take a longer time. So you separate it into different vessels, like you use petri place where you pour less amount of extract of these, and then you can use it. You can place it in oven so that you can dry it. But again, there is going to be a loss because the more the intermediate vessels or glasses you use, it is actually going to interfere with yield. Your yield is going to come less because you're going to lose a lot of products in each of these vessels. I hope I answered
Next
your
question.
questions.
Next question is, ma'am, is there any new method available for the extraction of oil apart from distillation units, Avenger?
So I have actually not worked with oil extensively, but still people go with the hydro distillation because that is assumed to be a best method to extract oil.
The next question is, can you suggest methods for extraction of oil from the trichomes in the leaf and stem?
So yeah, as I said, I haven't worked much with oils. So if you see, my presentation was not with much about oils or volatile compounds. But as per my understanding, people definitely go for distillation only, as of I know that for extraction of oil in a laboratory scale. Yeah, you
Ma'am, the
can
last question. It is, ma'am, if we use fresh plant material for synthesis extraction, can we get more number of components than using dried material?
see. Yes, if you use a flesh material, definitely going to end up with more number of compounds as compared to dry material. People have also extracted compounds from herbarium, but the compounds like flavonoids and these are very stable, so you easily get hold of them. But certain volatile, if you're focusing on volatile components, then it is advisable to take fresh material. So as you see that if you dry it, definitely this you're going to lose this volatile component. So it is the whole compounds
Ready, la?
minus the rest which has already degraded. So
Okay.
it is definitely going to be lesser than the fresh plant material extraction.
Okay, ma'am, that's the end of the questionnaire session. I once again thank you, ma'am, for spending your valuable time and enriching us with information on your field and also for patiently answering all our questions. So before I move on to the end of the session, I would like to let the participants know that the feedback link will be posted in some time and you have only 1 hour to fill it up. It is necessary to receive the e-certificate which will be sent to your registered mail ID. Now, I request our program advisor, Ms. Yubrani, to host the valedictorian.
Thank you, Yarni. Today, I take the opportunity to put all my gratitude into words. On behalf of Department of Biotechnology, I first and foremost express my sincere gratitude to our patrons, Honorable Chairman Dr. B. Bhavamanogaran sir, our Managing Director Mrs. S. Jessipriya ma'am, and our Director Mr. B. Sasishekar sir for giving the opportunity to conduct this program. I would like to express our deep gratitude to our beloved Principal Dr. Vati Seshagri Ram sir, our Dean Madam Dr. B. Parvatavardhani ma'am for providing continuous moral support for organizing this event. I would like to take this opportunity to place on record on our hearty thanks to our HOD Dr. G. Srikumar sir for the perfect logistic support and guidance he has extended to all of us in organizing this event. I would like to express my sincere thanks to our advisor, Dr. Renuga ma'am, for her constant encouragement and advice for this program. And also, I extend my special thanks to keynote speaker Dr. Narayani for accepting our invitation and for gracing your important work and sharing with us your finding and your opinion today, ma'am. Thank you so much. And I really wanted to appreciate our speaker for making the tremendous presentation and making this session an interesting and significant one. Thank you so much, ma'am. I can
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
It was nice contacting and to know that there are people all around the world connecting here and listening to me. I feel really honored for that. And feel free to contact me in case if you have any clarification. I don't know whether I have answered all your questions to the point. If not, definitely I'm open for a discussion. You can contact anytime for further discussion with your doubts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That's really great. Thank you, ma'am. And I cannot just say only thanks to my third year biotech student organizers, Mr. Alfred, Ms. Yarani, Mr. Vishal, Ms. Amrita, and Ms. Ellen for their involvement and their willingness to take on the completion of tasks beyond their comfort zone. Thank you, students. I also thank all the participants for the patient listening and for maintaining the decorum throughout the session. And we are really sorry for certain technical issues, but thank you for kind cooperation. Last but not the least, I thank Almighty for blessing the successful completion of this occasion. Thank you. Over to Yarni.
Thank you, ma'am, for your thoughtful words. I gently remind you all once again to fill up the feedback form posted in the chat box. I thank all the participants for taking interest in today's event and also thank each one of you for making this webinar a great success by cooperating with us in the smooth sailing of this event. I hope to see you all in all the upcoming Biotalk series hosted by the Department of Biotechnology. I end the session by saying our world is built on biology. Once we understand it, it becomes technology. Thank you all and stay safe.